Long ago, in a village cradled between red hills and an endless green forest, there lived a girl named Nhalani. She was thin like a sapling and quick like a lizard on hot stone. But whenever she walked through the village marketplace, people whispered behind her back. "There goes the hunter's daughter," they said. "The child of a man who chased shadows instead of animals. A girl raised on empty pots and hollow promises." Her father, Omolu, had once been known for his bravery. He followed every trail, faced every beast, and returned from the forest with stories instead of meat. Some said he was unlucky. Others said the spirits themselves played tricks on him. But in a community where hunters fed the people and warriors protected the land, there was no room for stories. Only results. When Omolu died from a fever early one rainy season, his death and shame were passed to Nhalani. She was only 8 then, but she remembered how the village elders shook their heads during the burial. She will carry his name like a stone. Better for her to forget the forest entirely. But Nhalani did not forget. Every evening, she walked alone to the forest edge, sat on a fallen log, and stared into the deep green shadows. People believed the ancestors slept there. They said the old spirits guarded the trees and punished anyone who disturbed them. But Nhalani had never feared the forest. When the wind rustled the leaves, it sounded almost like a voice calling her name. Still, she stayed away. Not because she was afraid, but because she had promised her father, on the night before he died, that she would live long enough to understand the world better than he did. "You must learn the forest, child," he whispered, his breath thin as smoke. "Not every danger has teeth. Listen more than you speak. And trust what others do not see." She did not understand his words then. But she carried them like seeds in her heart, waiting for the day they would grow. Years passed. Nhalani grew from a mock child into a quiet young woman. She fetched water, mended baskets, and helped the old women pound yam in the afternoons. She kept her head down, as the village encouraged, but she watched everything. One dry season, when the river shrank into a thin brown ribbon, the king announced a festival to honor the ancestors. Drums boomed across the village. The air smelled of roasting goat and palm wine. At the center of it all was the king's only child, Prince Jory, a boy loved by everyone for his gentle nature. As part of the celebration, the prince joined the dancers who circled near the forest border, the place where the living world ended and the ancestral world began. Children were forbidden to cross the invisible line, but in the excitement of drums and laughter, Prince Jory chased a bright blue butterfly past it. At once, the forest hushed. The wind stopped. The drums stuttered. Even the birds froze on their branches. Then a sound rose from deep inside the trees, not a growl, not a roar, but a long, rumbling sigh, like a sleeping giant waking. Before anyone could call out, green vines slid from the shadows like snakes. They wrapped around the prince's ankles and wrists. His scream cut through the air. In a single heartbeat, the forest swallowed him. People ran. Mothers clutched their children. Warriors lifted their spears, but not one of them dared take a step past the line. Everyone knew the punishment for entering the forbidden forest uninvited. The king fell to his knees, wailing. The elders lifted their staffs, chanting for guidance, but the air remained cold, silent, and heavy. Fear took the village in its fist. That night, a meeting was held in the king's courtyard. Everyone gathered, warriors, hunters, healers, elders, and even the children who were usually sent away. "We must send someone to plead with the ancestors," the king said, voice shaking. But the elders shook their heads. "No living person has spoken to the old ones in 100 seasons. The forest has closed its heart to us. They will not listen." Nhalani stood at the back of the crowd, her fingers clenched around the handle of a clay water pot. A heat stirred in her chest, The same feeling she had whenever people insulted her father's name. The stories. The empty-handed hunts. The whispers that he saw what others could not. Then she remembered his dying words. Listen more than you speak. Trust what others do not see. Before she could stop herself, she stepped forward. I will go, she said. Laughter broke out immediately, sharp, cruel, familiar. That one. The hunter's daughter. She will get lost before she reaches the first termite mound. But Nhalani's voice did not shake. My father taught me the forest. I know its roots and rivers. And I am not afraid. An elder scoffed. Courage is not enough. No, she replied quietly. But respect is. I will not enter as a warrior. I will enter as a daughter of the land. The king looked at her long and hard. Her clothes were simple, patched many times. Her arms were thin. Her hair was tied in a small knot. Nothing about her looked like a hero. But desperation makes even the proud listen. If you go, the king said, you will go alone. I expected nothing else. If the ancestors are angered, they may take you as well. Then let them judge my heart. Silence fell. Finally, the king nodded. Bring back my son, girl. And our land will honor you forever. She bowed her head. I do not seek honor. Only truth. Before dawn, Nhalani prepared for the journey. She took nothing but a calabash of water, a pouch of dried cassava, her father's old hunting knife, rusted, but still sharp. At the forest edge, she knelt in the dirt and pressed her forehead to the earth. Ancestors, she whispered, I come not to challenge you, but to understand you. Then she stepped over the invisible line. The forest closed behind her like a gate. Inside, the air changed. It smelled of old rain and bitter leaves. The ground was soft, covered in a blanket of fallen flowers. Strange blue lights flickered between the trees like restless spirits. Nhalani walked slowly, touching nothing, listening to everything. Whenever she reached a stream or a large tree, she greeted it with a bow, as her father had taught her. Water that remembers the sky, I greet you. Tree older than my grandmother's grandmother, I greet you. Hours passed. The forest grew thicker. The shadows deepened. At times she felt eyes watching her from behind the ferns. Yet no harm came. At midday, she reached a clearing where the light glowed golden, as if the sun were trapped inside a bowl of leaves. In the middle sat a creature shaped like a man but covered in bark and moss. Its eyes were two pale stones. Why does a child of the living walk in the land of the sleeping? It asked. I seek Prince Jory, Nhalani answered, bowing respectfully. The forest spirits took him, the creature said. They do not cease without reason. I wish to understand that reason, she said. The creature's stone eyes softened. Few humans ask why before demanding. The ancestors noticed such things. It pointed to a narrow path lined with white mushrooms. Walk this road. Do not leave it. If the spirits call you by name, do not answer. If something cries for help, do not look back. Nhalani thanked the creature and walked on. The path grew narrower. The trees leaned overhead until they met, forming an arch of twisted branches. The air turned cold, though the sun still shone. Then came the voices. Nhalani. Nhalani, daughter of failure. Nhalani, laughter child. They were the whispers she knew all too well, mocking, cruel, echoing from every direction. But she kept walking. She did not answer. The voices grew harsher. Nhalani, you do not belong here. You are nothing. You will fail like your father. Her legs trembled, but she clenched her fist and whispered, "My father was not a failure. He simply saw what others refused to see." At once, the forest fell silent. She walked on until she reached a deep ravine. Across it lay another stretch of forest, darker and thicker than before. In the middle of the ravine, floating in midair like a woven bridge of silver threads, hung an old spirit woman. Her skin was the color of smoke, her hair a cloud of white feathers. "You carry your father's truth," the spirit said. "But do you know your own?" Nhalani swallowed. "I am still discovering it." "Then step forward, and let us see if it is strong enough to carry you." Nhalani stepped onto the silver thread. It tightened beneath her foot. She stepped again. And again. As she reached the middle, the spirit whispered, "What is your fear, child?" Nhalani hesitated, but only for a moment. "That I will live my whole life unnoticed," she said quietly. "That my father's shame will become my shadow forever." The bridge glowed brighter. The spirit nodded. "Only those who speak truth may cross." Nhalani reached the other side safely. Beyond the ravine waited a clearing ring with giant trees whose trunks shimmered like bronze. At the center sat the council of ancestors, spirits of warriors, mothers, hunters, healers, and chiefs from centuries past. And beside them, bound by gentle vines but unharmed, sat Prince Jory. The oldest ancestor, a woman with eyes like burning embers, spoke first. "Child of Omolu," she said, surprising Nhalani, "why have you come?" "To bring back the prince," she replied, bowing deeply. "Please, he means no disrespect. He crossed the line by mistake." The ancestor shook her head. "It was no mistake. We called him." Nhalani's breath caught. "Why?" "Because your village has forgotten us," another ancestor said, his voice like rolling thunder. "They take from the land without gratitude. They pray only when they need. They offer nothing in return." She thought of the elders who had dismissed the festival offerings as a tradition, not respect. She thought of the hunters who no longer spoke to the trees before cutting branches. She thought of how children walked near the forest line without greeting it. The ancestors were right. "But why take the prince?" she asked gently. "Because a king listens to his child more than his counsel," the ember-eyed woman said. "If the prince returns with our message, the people will change." Nhalani swallowed. "What message?" "That harmony must be restored. Gratitude must return. The land is alive, and the people must remember this." The ember-eyed ancestor leaned forward. "But before we release him, we must know who will remind the village when they forget again." Her heart thudded. "If I must speak for the forest," she said quietly, "I will." The ancestors exchanged glances. "You would take on that burden?" "Yes." "You would be mocked, doubted, challenged?" "Yes." "You would walk between the living and the sleeping?" "If it means peace, yes." The ember-eyed woman rose. "Then you, Nhalani, daughter of Omolu, shall become the voice between worlds." She touched Nhalani's forehead. A warm wave swept through her, sharp, bright, ancient. When the warmth faded, Prince Jory stood before her, freed and smiling shakily. "Thank you," he whispered. "You will tell them what the ancestor said?" she asked. He nodded. "I will." When Nhalani and the prince stepped out of the forest, the villagers gasped. The king ran forward, lifting his son into his arms. But his eyes quickly turned to Nhalani. "You saved him," he said, voice breaking. "No," Nhalani corrected softly. "The ancestors saved us all. They only needed someone to listen." Word spread quickly. The people gathered to hear Nhalani speak. She told them everything the ancestors had said about respect, gratitude, and the need to honor the land. At first, some doubted her. But when the prince repeated her words, even the elders bowed their heads. From that day forward, the hunters offered prayers before every hunt. Children greeted the forest each morning. Festivals included songs of gratitude, not just celebration. And Nhalani became known not as the daughter of a failed hunter, but as the girl brave enough to challenge the spirits, and wise enough to listen to them. She never sought honor, but it came anyway. She never sought power, but the ancestors trusted her with their voice. And she never forgot her father's words. Listen more than you speak. Trust what others do not see. Because of her, the village and the forest lived in harmony for generations.